Hey friends, my name is Roger Reinert, and I'm your host today for Good Talk. You know, one of the things that I absolutely love about calling Duluth home is that we are a big, small town. And there are all sorts of things that happen all around us every day that we know something about, but we don't know a lot about. And so the goal of our podcast is to delve more deeply into those topics. The services, the people, the events, the activities that make this such an amazing place to live, work, and call home. So thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to a great conversation, and we'll dive right into the next one. Lisa, welcome to my podcast, Good Talk. So one of the things that we're trying to do is talk about some different things in our community that people might know about but not know a lot about. And I'm excited to have you on to talk about DuFTA, the Duluth Foot Trails Alliance. But I thought before we did that, we might just talk a little bit about how you and I even know each other.
Right.
So easily, I think you're the person I point to who got me into trail running. But I knew you before that, before
Right.
trail running. I knew you as a trail runner before I was. So do you remember how we first met?
Thinking back, I know I feel like it was when you were running for city council, maybe the first time.
I think so.
And you were one of the few politicians that came to my neighborhood, which is I used to live there, isolated.
Yeah.
Nobody ever came to. Nobody really gave much consideration to our neighborhood's needs. And so that really struck a nerve with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is, I think, that's also the memory I have of a community club meeting back when we had neighborhood planning districts.
Right.
It was a meeting at the Harrison Community Center. And your comment was, "Oh, you're the guy that shows up for things."
Right.
So that's now some 20 plus years ago, but it was it
Right.
impacted me in a positive way.
I have often said to people, if you show up in my neighborhood, that says something about your dedication to the people that live where I lived at the time.
Now, maybe the more interesting, I suppose it's just the Duluth big small town way, but somehow out of that we became friends,
Right.
and then you forced me to go trail running.
I don't know if it was forced.
I think it was forced.
I might have been invited.
I think it was forced. I remember being drug along on some of the initial
Right.
NMTCs, and for folks at home, the Northern Minnesota Track Club,
Right.
which I have no idea. That's a whole different podcast.
It is.
I need to get somebody on. We'll talk about that. But
Right.
it's a series of trail runs that take place in the spring, like right now,
Yep.
and then also in the fall. And I
Yep.
can vividly remember going all the way out to Fond du Lac to run
Zapp's Loop
to run with you.
or Rough Rider.
I don't know. It was my first ever trail run.
Yeah.
And you were kind enough to let me run with you, inexperienced and probably clumsy as I was, and
Now I can't keep up with you.
started a whole life of trail running.
Right.
So
Right.
how did that happen for you? I mean, you've been in magazines. Your trail running prowess is really something. How did you get into that space?
I ran off and on. Like in my freshman year of college, I fell in with some runners who encouraged me to do a 10K based on almost no training.
Which you can do at
Telmark.
that age,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah, it was slow, and they thought I got lost on the course. But I ran off and on until my kids were like toddlers.
Okay.
And then I would, run with them. And then I somehow, and I always try and remember what year, I found the NMTC Spring Series races, showed up to those. So that would probably be in the late 1990s.
Okay.
And back then it was like 30 people.
Oh yeah.
And Eugene Curnow, Barb Curnow,
Yeah.
Ed Dahlman, Jaro, that whole crew just welcomed me in.
Yeah.
And from there, it went from running the spring series races, fall series races. Eventually, I did the Eugene Curnow, what was then the Half Voyager Marathon. Trail Marathon is now the Eugene Curnow Trail Marathon. My first year was in 2008. That was the only marathon distance I've ever run. And it's like when your parents warn you about who you hang out with. You choose your friends wisely.
Yeah.
if you start hanging out with people who are trail runners and then you start hanging out with ultra runners, the next thing you know, you're going, oh, 30 miles, that's not crazy. 100 miles, that's not crazy.
Still feels crazy.
And you're doing them. And
the Kurnow is still my longest trail distance, so maybe someday.
Right. And I'm thinking about like, oh, maybe I should try that again. It's been a while since I've done
something so short.
So short.
What was your most recent?
My most recent was the Black Hills 100, which was actually somewhere between 105 and 108 miles.
Okay.
This past June. That was kind of what I had called was going to be my last 100 miler when I finished it. I was planning to run it in 2020. COVID happened, and it was canceled. In 2021, I had kind of a freak medication-induced injury right beforehand and ended up going out there, starting the race, dropping so as not to cause further injury. So last year was high stakes.
Yeah.
Last year I need to finish this race. I really want this 100.
And my recollection is it went pretty well.
If you ignore the puking for 60 miles, sure. Yeah, no, I finished. And I actually got
visualize that, friends.
A personal best in a 100-mile race. So I was ecstatic. I had excellent crew. I had a pacer who just kind of said to me at one point, "Listen, you got to run a little bit. I know you're not feeling good. I know this is hard, but even if you run 10 steps, that's going to drop your average pace." And so they just kept me moving.
Nice.
And yeah, what I have experienced in ultra running is that there's incredible support from the runners around you, from people that only see you maybe once a year at a race.
Right.
And are just like, people would come up to me, they'd watch me vomit and then come up and go, "You're doing really good. You look good." And I'd be like, okay.
Right.
You know, and the race directors out there have just been super supportive. And yeah, so I'm actually going back out for the 50K this summer.
Okay.
And a 30K next year. And then I will have completed all 4 distances and get the Person in Black award.
Ooh.
Right.
Okay, now you're talking. I like checking things off.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So in there, let's talk a little bit about DuFTA.
Okay.
And maybe what it is, and is your passion around trail running, was that the connection to bring it in? Because it's a new organization.
It is. So
not necessarily about running.
Not at all about running.
Right.
Although it touches on it because trail runners are foot trail users. Yeah. So DuFTA, Duluth Foot Trails Alliance, grew out of basically a recognition that there are user groups for all these different special interest trail users. You know, the cross-country skiers have DXC, mountain bikers have COGS, the horseback riders have the Duluth Area Horse Trail Alliance, you know, snowmobile clubs, ATV clubs. And there was nobody representing foot trail users who, according to
outside of maybe like one trail.
Outside of the Superior Hiking Trail Association.
Yeah.
Right? So the Superior Hiking Trail Association is specifically about the Superior Hiking Trail.
Yeah. And we should maybe pull that thread a little bit, because I think maybe the casual trail user might think every trail is the Superior Hiking Trail, and it's not, right?
It's not, no. And actually, I was part of a group of people that helped find the route through the city of Duluth, advocating with the city, showed up at so many city council meetings to say, no, you know, silent sports use is a really good use of our public land, and helped.
Just P.S., folks, super controversial at the time.
Oh my gosh, so controversial.
We forget. No,
I try and remind people, you know, I'm like, you know, it's like you don't understand how much easier it was for COGS to develop the Duluth Traverse after the Superior Hiking Trail had shown that this was a good, appropriate use that would bring people to town.
And people on the trails wasn't going to cause like crime and mayhem in your neighborhood. Yeah.
Right. It was so controversial. So the Superior Hiking Trail Association is great, but their focus is the Superior Hiking Trail.
One route.
Route, so 42-ish miles through the city of Duluth. The city would sometimes come to NMTC, or other groups would come to NMTC to represent foot trail users, and that's not what they're about. Their mission is to put on, you know, the Eugene Kurnow and the Voyager trail marathons and the spring and fall series. That's their mission.
Right.
the Duluth Park survey that they did last year before,
Right.
Showed that 80% of the trail users in Duluth, I think it was actually 81, are foot trail
Sure.
users. So we're the majority, and we don't have an organized group.
Right.
And so our vision is that Duluth's natural surface trails are sustainably maintained, accessible, welcoming, and serve a vibrant, inclusive, diverse trail community. So we're looking at not only runners and hikers, but what about that family that just wants to get out with their kids?
Right.
What about all the dog walkers? And
Right.
that's a big controversy.
On-leash people.
Yeah,
On-leash.
yeah. What about the birders? What about,
Right.
just people who want to get out? And so, within that vision, our mission is kind of threefold. We want to advocate for trail users.
And before the new organization, right?
Yeah. So we actually
Last year?
No, the idea came about in the winter of 2019-2020.
Okay.
And Jesse Schomburg and I started talking, and he brought some people in, and we were like, hey, we need to form an organization. And then the pandemic hit, and everything shut down.
Right.
And we were able to meet monthly over Zoom because what else did we have to
Right.
do? We had that time.
Right.
And it took us, so we officially became a nonprofit, I want to say in 2020, early 2022.
Okay.
Because we took that full year to really just sit down, hash out our vision, our mission, what we wanted to accomplish, meet with a bunch of different user groups.
Yeah.
We met with people from the city, from SHTA, from NMTC, from COGS, from Courage Duluth, dog walkers, all kinds of different folks to see what is it that you want?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you need? What do you see missing?
Yeah.
And so we spent a good year plus
And I think 2021 is about when I became familiar with that this was coming.
Because I think I reached out to you and said, hey, we could use a little
bylaw help. Yeah.
Can we use a little bylaw help?
Because early 2022 would make sense.
Right. We had our first annual meeting in April of 2022, and we had just become a Minnesota state nonprofit at that time.
Yep.
We haven't gotten our 501c3 yet because that's an expensive proposition, and we're a brand new group without deep pockets.
So you started to talk about some of the different parts of or different objectives of DuFTA.
Yeah. So our mission, is made up of three objectives: advocacy, action, and education and outreach.
Okay.
And so advocating for foot trail users. So having a seat at the table. So when the city of Duluth or one of the parks does some planning, that they're getting the input of foot trail users.
Right.
Because often that's been overlooked. Chester Park, when they did their mini master plan, they didn't really have anybody to pull in. And so the needs of foot trail users often get overlooked in the voices of the people who are there.
And yet that data tells us that it's not just the majority. It's like the overwhelming, this is what people use the trails for.
Right.
So,
And, like within a user group, because I'm a cyclist, I'm a skier, it's, who you hang out with is who you think is the majority.
Sure.
It's like, well, this is my group. And so
it's like any aspect of life. Oh,
Right.
everybody thinks like this or does this.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so, it was nice to have that data from the city's survey
Yeah.
to go, wow, this is a need.
Yeah.
And so, we're working on, we've been, I think, moving kind of slowly so that we have our feet under the ground under our feet. We feel solid,
Yeah.
and we know where we're going, and also realizing that we are an all volunteer organization. I think the majority of us are, either working full time, nearly full time, recently retired, and so it's like, what can we take on and sustainably do?
Right. Now, but a growing organization, right? I mean, people can join. Is membership? Can people be members? Is membership a good thing?
Yes.
Are there exorbitant dues? Like all of that.
So part of our, so yes, you can join. We do have a membership. It's We had a long discussion about this as we were forming the group, because I'm a real advocate for how do we keep things accessible to everybody.
Right.
And I'm talking income levels.
Right.
I spent a majority of my life not having a lot of money. And so I'm real keenly aware of what seems like not much money to one person is a lot of money to another person.
Else, yeah.
So our dues are $10 a year, but we will, what we say is, if that's a barrier, please let us know.
Yeah.
That we don't want that to be a barrier to
It's
people.
not going to stop anyone.
It's not going to stop anybody from becoming a member.
And then, so how has membership gone so far? I know you just not long ago had kind of your first annual gathering.
We had our second annual meeting this past April, so about a month ago now.
Yep.
Lots of people came out for that, so we had a bigger turnout. It was on the same night as the Duluth Area Outdoor Alliance social, which we were hosting.
Okay.
And the topic of discussion there was positive trail etiquette education, which is a big focus of mine personally.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of people come. We had a lot of interest in what our group is doing. In this past year, we've started actually being involved in more things.
Okay.
As you know, we've gotten our feet on the ground. We know what we're trying to do. We're working with this. We're partnering with the city of Duluth on 2 areas. We're helping to build and redo a trail in Hartley that connects from the Woodland neighborhood. I don't know if that's Woodland proper. It connects from the Harvard Street entrance up over Fairmont Knob into the park. So it's a neighborhood use trail, which are really, really important.
Yep.
That was actually identified 20 odd years ago, that, we want to make sure that everybody in Duluth can get into a natural area within blocks of their home, because most of us have one within blocks of our home.
Right. It's one of the great things about Duluth. The 10,000 wooded acres, and both structured and more open green spaces. So,
So we partnered with the city of Duluth, and we've been working on redoing that Harvard Connector Trail. Okay. We'll start up work weekends here now that the trails are opening up again. Okay. And then we're partnering with City Parks and Rec Department to offer monthly hikes with with a science, kind of a little bit of a science theme to them. So our first one, we looked at winter ecology. Okay. And the impact that snow has on keeping the ground, especially this year, we had so much snow so early, the ground didn't freeze as deep. And how animals survive, how plants survive. We've done a stream ecology. I just did one in April on spring phenology. Okay. And we're committed to continuing to do those. It might not happen this month just because May has a lot.
Now, people can go on those whether they're members or not,
correct,
right? Because you're partnering with the city.
Yeah, we're partnering with the city. The city, Adam, and I'm not going to say his last name because I'm gonna
Adam at the city.
Adam at the city in Parks and Rec. They do have a fee for the hike, so they're a hike through the city of Duluth, but they have basically a scholarship program. Okay. So again, if you can't afford the $5 fee, you just need to fill out a form. It's good for the year. Again, reducing those barriers. Yeah. Because we want everybody to be able to play outdoors, not just the people with the right toys.
Right. Or people, and encourage and invite others, not just those that are already doing it. Right.
Yeah.
So if I can do things kind of through the city and there really isn't dues, is there any reason for folks to join? Is it somehow helpful to DuFTA if others join?
Yes. So the money that we are bringing in is, helping us. Just the basics of making a sign, getting business cards, having a website. Yeah. We'd like to get our 501(c) nonprofit status because with that, we can then seek grants. Sure. People's donations are then a tax write-off. Right. It helps fund just this organization to do the work we do. We've hit barriers with some things where we need to have insurance, and insurance costs money. And, the organization started with all of us founding members reaching into our pockets and
to
going
do the seed money.
to do the seed money.
All right.
And so membership goes right back into the
Yeah.
organization, into, making us be able to do what we want to do in the future.
And I would think also, for those who like, I want to be supportive, I don't know if I have the $10, I would imagine there's still benefit when you show up at those tables of
Right.
saying, we've got X number of members, like that represents a louder voice than just an individual.
Right. And for doing things like trail work, when volunteering, like even if people are like, I can't, I want to be a member, I want to contribute, I don't have the money. Great. Do you have the time? Because that volunteer time is worth money.
More. Oh, yeah.
When eventually you go to writing grants, that's worth a dollar amount,
Right.
and it's a matching fund.
Right.
And so it's we just keep track of that.
Yeah.
Like, and I work for an organization that when I volunteer for a nonprofit, if I volunteer 20 hours a year, which I do much more than,
Right. Yeah.
but they will then donate $100 to my favorite nonprofit.
Okay.
So I'm like, I'm gonna track that.
Yeah. So, folks, if you're passionate about our trails, but money might be an issue, like keep in mind, number one, that's not a barrier
It's
to
not a
joining.
barrier, yeah.
And number two, like your time is actually probably more valuable than that membership due.
Right. And I would say that I would say any nonprofit organization
Yeah.
is going to say the same thing: is, hey, if you can give us time, that's great.
So as you look at, and you're a board member,
I am the vice chair.
Okay. Ooh,
Yeah.
leadership
Yeah.
role.
Yeah.
All right.
I would say that,
Now, it's a brand new organization. Do we already know? Does vice chair become chair? What?
we're working on that.
All right.
We're working on succession right now. I mean, our board has been in place for a year. We're going
Right.
into our second year. I have a background in nonprofit organization. I've been served on many nonprofit boards over 30 odd years.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, because it's been more than 30 years. But, I was just like, we need to have a rotating, we can't all go on and off the board at the same
Yeah.
time. We need to
Yeah.
rotate. So our terms are, staggered right now, 1, 2, and 3 years for the founding board.
Yeah.
And then they're 3-year terms. And that's a lot to ask of people. And that's why, we don't want to say you're committed for life,
Right.
Because life happens.
So where you talked a little bit about current focus, but as you
Right.
think of sort of the arc of the organization, what are those 3 to 5 year goals that maybe are a little bit
Right.
on or over the horizon?
So one of the really big things that we're focusing on, and something that's a passion of mine, is what we call our idea committee, which is, and I always,
No one's listening. You can say whatever you want.
Okay. Do that for a minute.
So while Lisa's checking that out, just keep in mind, folks, that, again, we have the Superior Hiking Trail, which is very familiar to many, marked with the blue indicators, but that's just one route through the city. There are also so many other routes. So as you think about getting outdoors and enjoying trails within the city of Duluth, the Duluth Foot Trails Alliance might be a really great place for you to connect. And I know you're on socials, Insta, Facebook.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
A website.
We do have a website.
And it's
It's a complicated one. It's
okay. Could we just Google DuFTA and probably find it?
Maybe, because Google algorithms.
Okay.
It's sites.google.com/view/DuFTA, which is DUFTA. And then on Facebook, we're just DuFTA, or Duluth Foot Trails Alliance. We have 2 Facebook. We have like
Okay.
a page, and then we have a group, friends
Oh,
and
sure.
members
Yep.
of Duluth
Yep.
Foot Trails Alliance. And then our Instagram is at DuFTA, all lowercase, _foot.
Yep. And I would just, as a follower, encourage the Instagram following.
Right.
That seems to be really
Yeah.
current and great place to get information.
I'm doing my best. I am not a
Are you
social.
the-
I am.
You're the person.
I'm the person, and I'm not real great at social media, but I'm like, we need to be where people can find us.
You're figuring it out.
And I did kind of a big, hey, follow. And we're up to 107 followers right now, which
I'm in.
I think is awesome and has been kind of fun.
Yeah.
But so the IDEA committee is our inclusivity, diversity, equity, and accessibility.
Okay.
Is essentially what that stands for. And so, what we recognize is that trail users do not necessarily they should reflect the population that lives in a community.
Yeah.
But a lot of people feel barriers to getting out on the trails. They don't feel like they belong.
Yeah.
We had somebody comment that, they feel like they don't have the right equipment. They don't know how to use the trail the right way.
Yeah.
I would argue that there is no right way.
Right.
There's certainly, like right now during the spring thaw, it's
stay off.
If they're closed, stay off. If like now they opened up, if you come to a muddy area, go right down the middle of it.
Yep. Don't widen
it. It's real leave no trace principles.
Yeah.
But that you don't need to have special equipment to get outside.
Right.
I often hike in my sandals.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And this is like the lowest threshold entry to enjoying some of our outdoor amenities in the city.
You don't need anything special. And so, as I now don't have children.
Yeah.
I have grandchildren.
Yeah.
But, and when my grandchildren are visiting, I live near Hartley Park and we go hike in the park. My kids grew up outdoors. And, we'd just go for hikes.
Yeah.
We'd go for walks. You don't need anything special for it. And Duluth is blessed with so many trails.
Right.
And
odds are wherever you live, something's close by.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so just having people feel safe and feel welcome to be using the trails. Unfortunately, we've had incidents in Duluth.
Yeah.
Where, racial slurs have happened. There's been,
even physical altercations.
But
to be clear, the vast minority, most people's trails experience are just really
very benign. Yeah.
Positive and, and we know the physical and mental health, it's good for us to get outside.
Right. I was just listening to a podcast where they were talking about the benefits of forest bathing. And forest bathing is not going out and, sitting in a pond and getting wet. It's just being out in nature.
Being bathed by the forest.
Right.
Yeah,
and maybe turning off all the
electronics,
just silencing them and just listening to the birds and listening to the plants. And just there's been studies done that kids who walk to school and walk through a natural area are better ready to learn when they get to school.
Yeah.
So making sure that we have those connections from neighborhoods into the schools, from neighborhoods into work.
Right.
I commute at least one day a week. I try and commute by not driving, and because I live near Hartley, I can commute on single track the majority of the way to work.
Nice.
Which is a gift living here. I was just in San Francisco. You can't do that.
Right. Right. Yeah, we still can.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, would you encourage people to DuFTA, the Duluth DuFTA, Duluth Foot Trail Alliance.
Yep.
What would you encourage people to do? Follow on Instagram, Facebook, check out the website. What action step would you encourage them to take?
So I would say check out our website because you're going to see our mission, our vision, what we've got planned. There's a membership link if you scroll down on it. You can get to our membership form. We have it set up so you can pay with PayPal or Venmo, or just, if cost is an issue, just message us.
Right.
And, we do monitor our email address.
But ultimately, just looking for people to get out and enjoy the foot trails. And if that's something you enjoy, get involved.
Right. Get involved and participate. We'll be putting out information about when we start doing trail work, and we're looking for other areas that need trails that need adopting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Lisa Byrne, representing the Duluth Foot Trail Alliance, trail runner par excellence, longtime friend. Thank you so much for being on Good Talk with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for joining us today. You've been listening to Good Talk. I'm your host, Roger Reiner, and we look forward to having you with us for our next conversation.